information. There
The
was no
quarterback
lack of
position
news.
always comes through for you in Cleveland. It always comes through, no matter what.
Never fails. I mean, hey guys, how are we doing? I mean, feels like everybody's gotten. We have plenty to talk about. I mean, there's no shortage of.
Can we get Kevin Stefanski to spill some tea too while we're at it?
I don't think Kevin's very active over there on X, unfortunately.
Actually, it'd be a shame. It'd be a shame if he didn't have a burner account.
Absolutely.
I don't want
Coach,
to
you
find
got
this
any
out.
burner
No.
accounts we need to know about?
Everything you get from me. It's all I'm doing all my own stuff and sending all my own stuff.
I like that. I like it. No burner. Nobody in this room needs a burner
No,
account.
no,
Okay, we're good.
I have enough trouble managing my own
I was
account.
gonna say I can't. I'll mess that up for sure quickly.
And if you guys are missing it, obviously Baker Mayfield just about 15 minutes ago
Launched a grenade.
Scorched earth.
Yeah, he responded into D'Orlando Ledbetter, who covers the Falcons down in Atlanta, had tweeted out that Kevin Stefanski had a dumpster fire at quarterback in Cleveland. Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson failed and started the chain reaction to 11 others, which Baker responded with, "Failed is quite the reach, pal. Still waiting on a text or call from him after I got shipped off like a piece of garbage. Can't wait to see you twice a year, coach." Well, that makes this thing, and I mean, listen, they obviously not entirely Brown-centric. It relates to Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield, obviously, but now those two playing away.
Do I just spill the tea
Daryl,
right now?
you do whatever you want.
Right
I'm
now.
just here.
Yeah,
I'm just here
hold
to
it.
keep the.
Would you
keep
like to know
everything
why
safe and
Baker
get us on the
Mayfield
air.
isn't a Cleveland Brown? Because he was a jerk to everybody in the building. And I witnessed it with my own 4 eyes. He told a VP to go bleep himself right in front of me.
That'll get you escorted out pretty quickly.
Right. Well, no. I mean, you say that in any type of a work environment to anybody and you're fired. I mean, that's insubordinate right there.
Yeah.
That's insubordinate disrespect. You're going to be fired for something like that. And this is the stuff Baker was pulling behind the scenes. Now, if you're going to say that to a VP of the Cleveland Browns, how are you treating the equipment guy? How are you treating the the janitor, right? That's charged with cleaning up after you all the time, right?
And you're the quarterback too. You're
Absolutely.
making a great point too. Because the quarterback, you got to bite your tongue.
You're the face of the organization. That's why he's not here. He was not a good dude. He was an immature dude when he was here. And oh, by the way, Baker, okay, yeah, the Browns were guilty of trying to court another quarterback here, but you asked for a trade request. It took him a little while to find somebody who actually wanted you, and that was the Carolina Panthers. But like, I defended Baker quite a bit. He lost me tonight. That was it. That was it for me. I can't defend the guy anymore.
This is the type of thing, though, that I just know when we go to watch NFC South football. And not discarding anything you said, Baker's going to go scorch earth on Kevin Stefanski in game. Like,
throwing a bunch of interceptions?
No, this will be the Baker. He'll throw in his first time against Kevin Stefanski, the 2 games they played. It'll be like 9 touchdowns to no picks. He'll throw for 900 yards in those 2 games. This is Baker. We lived through the Baker cycle. All he needs is a chip on his shoulder, and then the dude just goes ridiculous. And then I'm sure the next year he'll probably throw 3 picks to 1 touchdown, and he'll just keep going through the cycle. But make no mistake, the next Baker Mayfield outing against the Falcons, he's probably going to look incredible. It's just the way that Baker works.
I mean, he's just now giving me a reason to root for Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta now. Thanks, Baker. Appreciate you, Bake.
Well, I just, as a quarterback, you have to, we say that to, as a coach, I would say that to high school kids. Before you hit send, think about who's reading it. Would your mom, would your boss, would your kids, you have to think about that stuff. For me, once again, I was a big Baker fan. That's an inappropriate thing. It's inappropriate.
I've been told that recently. Think before you post.
Yeah, absolutely. All of us.
Check
right?
for spelling, check for pronunciation, or punctuation and all that stuff. And also make sure you don't make anyone too angry.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Baker did plenty of that, but that's nothing he's shy to. So this will be a fun little thing to. And again, this is the fun part: is former Brown, former Cleveland Brown. We get to sit back and we just
got
get to go.
Former Brown on Brown, crime going on here.
And now we just get to sit back and kind of enjoy it as a far. You guys enjoy the NFC South. We're going to be over here, and what hopefully looks a lot better. We're just going to cross our fingers and hope for that one, because obviously there is still a lot going down in the Browns coaching surge. Obviously, since last week, we've had the Harbaugh domino fall. Right, he's over to the Giants, and we could talk about the other 4 hirings that have been made. The beauty of us having a 2-hour show is that I can tell you those things and those not even be a part of anything we're really going to talk about much today, because still the Browns are going through troubles of their own.
Yeah.
Right now, as of today, about an hour or so ago, we got the news that Mike McDaniel has pulled his name from the Browns coaching search, and he was one of the final 6 that the Browns were planning to bring in for a second interview that was scheduled for tomorrow. there's a lot that goes into this. I want to get into whether or not this is like an indictment on the Browns, but Daryl, I'll turn to you first because the biggest implication here is that the Rooney Rule is something that has to be satisfied inside of a coaching search, which either comes from hiring a minority candidate, or if you're not hiring a minority candidate, you need to go through and at least satisfy going through 2 in-person interviews with those, one of which were Mike McDaniel. And right now you look around the remaining candidates you have, Nate Shieldhouse, who, by the way, can't interview until at the very least Monday, and that's if the Rams don't make the Super Bowl. He is the only minority candidate left out of the 5 that remain.
Correct. And
that creates some problems.
Not if they hire him.
Well, this is very true. If you go and hire Shieldhouse, you don't have an issue. But if not, there needs to be a 6th candidate added to the list, or at least that would be my understanding of it.
Well, unless there is a candidate that we don't know about, say maybe at the college level, that is a minority. But you're right. The Rooney Rule stipulates now it is a change that they made because, quite frankly, teams were making a mockery of it. Right? They would do what I would call a token interview, and then 5 minutes later, when they're done, then go hire the coach. See the Miami Dolphins, who the other day I believe they interviewed 2 candidates in one day, and then 2 hours later named Jeff Hafley their head coach.
Yeah.
But hey, they checked the boxes of the Rooney Rule, and it's an important rule. There's no question about that. But teams are going to find a way to make a mockery of it as well. And that's unfortunate. They've extended it to coordinator jobs. They've extended it to front office executive jobs. Like they have tried to they've tried to expand it in a way in which it's actually productive. It's a shame that you have to have the rule to begin with, but here we are. They have the rule. And so unless there is a candidate that we don't know about that the Browns have interviewed in person, then you would be correct. They would have to just interview and then hire Nate Shieldhouse to be in compliance. Otherwise, they're going to have to drag another name in here to interview because right now this is the field of 5. Jim Schwartz is interviewed. Todd Monken on the interview schedule today. Grant Udinsky, Jesse Minter, going to be later this week. And then, of course, Shieldhouse will be next week. The earliest he could interview would be on Monday. And I would be shocked that right after the NFC Championship game, then he hops on a plane for Cleveland to come here for an in-person interview. I would think that would be a Tuesday or a Wednesday type of interview. But you never know.
I just want to clarify, too, that is only if they lose that game, correct? Can he interview if they're heading to the Super Bowl?
Because remember, there's a week between. Okay. There's a week between, so yes, they would be permitted to speak with him next week, regardless of outcome of the NFC Championship.
Because, there's a lot on the plate there. And this is kind of the problem, is like nobody's going to sit here and argue whether or not the Rooney Rule is well-intentioned, because I think flat out, we know why it's in place, and it's important to have something like that in place. But the reality of the situation that I feel like we're looking at right now is that you look at the Browns have narrowed down their candidates to who they feel is a good head coach, when in reality, now the 6th name that you drag in, it's going to be an interview to get an interview done. This is the problem that happens, and nobody's going to come out and say that, but everybody's going to look at it and think the exact same thing. Is if you drag an Antonio Pierce or an Anthony Weaver in here who you didn't think to interview in the first place, and you weren't giving a second interview in the first place, when you drag one of those guys back in, it's like you have to, but you're also then not giving these guys an actual legitimate opportunity. They get the interview experience, but I would be stunned if that guy ended up with the job, would be the point. So you're basically just bringing in a guy to interview a guy.
Yeah. So look, I would never accuse a team of doing, because that's just reckless. But let's be honest about it. It does happen in the National Football League.
Absolutely, it does.
It has happened in the National Football League, and I'm sure it will continue to happen in the NFL. So I'm not saying that is the case here, but based on the remaining 5 that they, 2 are down, 3 more to go. There's only one minority candidate left on that list. Had they been able to talk to Mike McDaniel, he would have been the second. Well, in this case, he would have been the first in the door, and then Shieldhouse next week would have fulfilled the rule whether they hired him or not. So, I would just keep an eye out for another head coaching candidate for the Cleveland Browns potentially popping up at some point this week, unless, again, their eye is on Nate Fieldhouse. And I don't know, maybe this tips their hand, because McDaniel obviously got some feedback somewhere, whether it was directly from the Browns themselves, whether it's from his representation. He's the one that withdrew. The Browns did not say to him, hey, let's not do this because you're out, you're out. No, this is his choice. So he must have gotten some feedback somewhere that he would not be a candidate. And I guess our dreams of having Mike McDaniel be the offensive coordinator here have also just been dashed.
It's such an interesting thing now, because you point out the fact that, like, hey, there might be a word that maybe he's not being considered highly for that job. Maybe he's not in the final running or top candidates that they have. You also go into the other side of that right now, which is he just interviewed for the Chargers offensive coordinator opening after Greg Roman got fired today. I think that we look at McDaniel, and he's gone through how many different interviews. I think another take to this is that he's gone through and interviewed so many different times that you eventually got to narrow down your own list.
And the Browns have just announced that the second interview with Todd Monken has been completed.
Okay, so that one's done too.
We are now 2 completed interviews in the round of second interviews. We're 2 in. First Jim Schwartz, now Todd Monken. So onward we go with contestant number 3.
Which I think it was announced today as well. I want to say it was Minter on Thursday, Yudinski on Friday, and then obviously the Shieldhouse in the waiting. Coach, what is your take on this? Like, you sit here, you see McDaniel kind of pull out. What is your initial reaction as to why something like that happens?
My initial thought, going on what Daryl said, I didn't think of it that way. That makes sense to me. But what I thought of is a guy who's asking for more control than the Browns are willing to give him. And when you talk about guys who have been established, and he's an established offensive mind, when you think about him and Shanahan and McVay, these guys are kind of where everybody's trying to reach out to their trees and get those guys with the motion and the condensed formations and all that kind of stuff. So for me, when he's coming in, it's did he want too much draft control? Did he want whatever roster configuration? All those things that go into being a head coach at any level, but especially the NFL level. That's not really what the Browns want to give. They don't want to give that type of power to someone. So when you think about Shieldhouse coming in, right? Now you're thinking, if Schwartz is your head coach, is Shieldhouse now the offensive coordinator? It kind of makes sense. Now you're keeping the defense, in theory, kind of, there's some structure to it, some stability there. I don't know. For me, when guys like Mike McDaniel, I always look at that as a kind of a warning sign, just because, for me, he walks in and goes, I want this, and they go, no. And he's like, I'll see you later then. And that's kind of what happens when you get established guys. They have demands, and they've kind of earned it. And that's kind of what happened. That's, for me, that has something to do with it as well.
There's a lot of different things that play into this. We're going to go over some of them. We're going to listen to Albert Breer gave his thoughts on why Mike McDaniel may have pulled out from this job. We'll react to that. Dane Brugler set to join us of The Athletic at 7:40 today. We'll get into some draft talk, where the Browns could be heading, what we see in this draft class right now. Obviously, we just watched Indiana win the national championship, going back to last night. So we'll have plenty of questions for Dane, but you guys can chime in here. 216-474-0092. We're going to get into so much more. Plus, Sean McDermott, also maybe a name the Browns can look at. That's all in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Daryl Ryder with the guys here on the Fan Offseason Special right here on 92.3 The Fan.
latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Daryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Dane Brugler set to join us coming up here at 7:40 of The Athletic. We'll talk a little bit of Browns draft talk, some guys that are here, the draft class in general. We got plenty to cover with Dane. But Mike McDaniel out of the Browns running via himself. He pulled himself out. It was not a Browns decision. It was a Mike McDaniel decision. Plenty of things to climb into. It's myself, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, and Daryl Ryder, who's, of course, brought to you courtesy of Scheiben Jewelers, Cleveland's premier jewelry store. A lot of people throwing out their theories, their ideas, and that's what all of us have basically sat here and done through the first 15 minutes of the show as well. We sat here and go, okay, Mike McDaniel pulled out. No longer here. Why is that so? Albert Breer of the MMQB on earlier today with Afternoon Drive. And Albert gave sort of his take on McDaniel pulling out and maybe just why that was.
I think this is an interesting decision by him. I think maybe there is some feeling that you aren't getting the job. He's also, I think, right in the thick of a number of these. And, I mean, to me, like, I think the one he probably winds up in is Tampa. And it could be, like, too, like that, you know, he isn't getting the job and, you know, he wants to focus on a couple of the other ones. You know, sometimes, and I think that we've gotten to the point with these two where there are so many Zooms being done and so many of these guys are being kind of like run through the ringer. And it's like you've been doing these nonstop for a couple of weeks and you have a feeling that maybe you're not in the driver's seat for one of them. I mean, you can always go to the team and say, like, look, just level with me. If I'm not getting this, like, why don't we not waste each other's time? I've definitely heard of those sorts of scenarios playing out. Not that it did here, but I've heard of those sorts of scenarios playing out in the past as well.
That's something that just wouldn't surprise me. Like, I've mentioned the amount of interviews Mike McDaniel has gone through this offseason, both for head coach, both for, you know, offensive coordinator positions. At some point, you do have to take a step back and just go, okay, I've interviewed for all of these. Like, what are these either do I not want to take or do I not feel it's the best fit for me? Or do I turn around and go, it just doesn't feel like I'm like, maybe I didn't kill this interview. Maybe it feels like that they're leaning a different direction. That interview didn't go so well. Let's just knock them off the table and let's focus on the ones that I feel like I have a better chance at and are a better fit.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you look at Mike McDaniel, I'm going to talk about a scheme fit. This is not a great scheme fit. The weather's poor. He doesn't have really good receivers. The offensive line needs to be rebuilt. He's unsure at quarterback with the timing, rhythm, pace that he likes to work with his quarterbacks. So him coming in, he doesn't have – there's not a lot of weapons for what he's good at, right? He's not a CEO per se. He's an offensive-minded guy who is the head coach. When you think of Harbaugh, CEO. When I think of Mike McDaniel, I think about space and pace and passion and energy and the inventive stuff on offense. You're not doing that in this weather. Really, that comes down to it. That's part of, I would think, part of his thinking as well.
It was one of the guys that I even looked at from the beginning, and there were enough things, I think, from a Browns perspective to be very concerned about with Mike McDaniel. Like, if you want the offensive mind, and a lot of guys that they have in here for interviews are offensive-minded guys. I think 4 out of the 6 are lean towards the offense, so you think that's something the Browns are certainly considering. It's like, but you look at the CEO type of stuff that you do always have to do as a head coach, and it was the Mike McDaniel players not getting punished for being late to practices or late to meetings, and a sense that he had lost the locker room in Miami. And every time I've heard somebody who either has spoken to the Browns about what they might be looking for or just going off on their own limb, one of the main things that always gets mentioned is you need a leader of men. You need somebody that controls that locker room, that guys want to play for it. McDaniel is said to be a player's coach, but I think it's almost to the fault of you're maybe too much of a player's coach. So
can you do that here, though? That's the when you say that, can you do that here? I'm not sure that that's a possibility, right?
They tried doing that here. His name was Romeo Cornell. It did not end well for Romeo or the Browns.
I mean, it seems like that's something that they don't really want, where, you know, you're the guy making the decisions, right? And if you're the guy making decisions, that's draft decisions. That's how we're working out. That's our practice plans. I'm sure they seem to delegate that a little bit more. For my liking, I want that head coach guy. I want him to be in charge. I'm not sure that's what they do.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what the Browns do. I'm not sure that's what Mike was really going to be brought here to take over. Like, and these are the things to consider too. In this, I think, is that you take a look and you go, okay, this just failed. We know everything that the Browns have been doing or have been attempting to do in the current regime. When you fire head coach, there's also, I would imagine, a reflection process of like, okay, maybe why didn't this work? And maybe they do look at those things of like, okay, maybe we do need somebody that's a little bit more structured, that is, more in charge of those things, is going to hold players accountable, maybe take over some more of those things, have slightly more control than they had previously, even though now we're talking about the power dynamics of it's going to be Barry hiring the coach, and you would think the coach reports to Barry, but maybe you're giving coaches a little bit more of that. And I don't know that Mike was the guy for that either. Well,
I kind of doubted that he was going to ultimately be the selection to be the head coach. And, you mentioned the vast number of offensive coordinator interviews he's having to do in addition to the head coaching interview. It takes life out of you too, right? There's only, and so if you know that, or you feel pretty confident you're not ultimately going to be the guy, or you're not going to be able to sell ownership on selecting you for the job, what's the point of going through with it? And at that point, you're not obligated to do the Browns any favors either, and allow them just to check a box because you came to town and had lunch or dinner on their dime, right? So, if anything, thank you for taking your name off the list. Now we're down to 5. We're probably going to get a 6th, okay? Because it does have to be an external candidate. So they can't just, interview somebody currently on the staff and say, hey, we checked the box. No, they're going to have to talk to someone external of the organization. That is, again, assuming that there is not a candidate out there that the Browns have spoken with in person and we're just unaware of. That's entirely possible. So let's not just assume that, these are the only 5 left standing. It wouldn't shock me, but they're going to, if that is the case, they're going to have to add another name to this coaching pool, if for anything, to comply with the league mandated rule.
And this is interesting too, because we talk about getting back up to 6. There's a chance this also goes to 7, because the Bills just fired Sean McDermott, who now hasn't been brought in for any interviews at this point, is definitely a name that you look at the record, you look at what he's done in Buffalo, taking over prior to Josh Allen being there, being partially responsible, I'm sure, as a head coach for the development of Josh Allen, and a team that's consistently deep into the playoffs. Sean McDermott's a name that I at least look at it and I go, if you don't at least reach out to the guy and see if there's mutual interest there and consider bringing him in for an interview, you've done yourself a disservice at this point. Like, that's too good of a name to go out there and just go, we're already into our search. We're just going to keep moving with where we are.
I don't think McDermott's going to be on the list. And the reason I say that, look at the final 5 names. Jim Schwartz, Todd Monken, Grant Udinski, Nate Fieldhouse, Jesse Minter. How does Sean McDermott fit on that list? Now, I'm not saying that it would not be a great move by the Browns. Not by any stretch. I keep going back to what Andrew Berry said on, I think it was January 6th. And he talked about finding the right coach that fits them and where they're at in the team building process. McDermott, I think, is a turnkey guy. I don't think he is a rebuild. I think McDermott, the perfect spot for him, and oh my goodness gracious, it really pains me to say this. A, because of the damage he'll probably do against the Browns twice a year, but also, two, just looking at the situation objectively. The best landing spot for McDermott is not Cleveland with the Browns. It's either Pittsburgh or Baltimore.
Now, you see, this is the interesting part, though, because I watch him take over the Bills. Bills are a team that was, in a rebuild. Like, Tyrod Taylor was their quarterback. They were expected to be very bad the year that McDermott took over.
They had an 18-year playoff drought.
Yeah, he took over and took Tyrod Taylor to the playoffs in a year where everyone looked around and went, Bills might get a really good draft pick this year. Like, that team's not going to be very good. I don't know that rebuild is beyond him, and I don't know that you look at some of the other jobs open in the NFL, not specifically, obviously, Baltimore set up in a really nice spot, but even Pittsburgh, that's like a full-blown rebuild. If you're McDermott, you go, I just got a really good defense, and I got to figure out what I have in the offense. But that is like a partial rebuild at the very worst that you're actually going through taking a job in Cleveland.
What's funny when the candidates, and I say this as a coach, you're always better when you have better players. So when you talk about McDermott, you talk about these guys, it's because they had great quarterbacks. And that's where the Browns, they got to find, if it's not a great quarterback, a stable quarterback, a guy who's going to be underneath center for a number of years, a guy you have faith, maybe not a guy you win because of, but a guy you can win with. They haven't had any of those things. And McDermott's an outstanding coach, and you're right. I'm with Daryl. I think the Baltimore job more than the Pittsburgh job. Baltimore, you got some pieces there. You just have to figure out
quarterback
how to get over the top. Because defensively, they have good pieces. Offensively, they have good pieces. Go out and get a receiver, one more receiver, and you could be really good in Baltimore quickly.
I just think it gets so interesting when you compare these situations of Buffalo, and by the way, both to Baltimore and Cleveland, because I think a lot of the reasons why McDermott ended up being let go, right, is I listened to some of the Bills reporters and people talk about what happened in that building. It's eerily similar of what just happened in Cleveland, a disconnect between him and Brandon Beane that didn't feel like they were on the same page all year. It felt much more like you turned to the GM and maybe thought, did he prepare the coach well enough? Did he give him enough to work with? Like, you got Josh Allen, best receiver all year was Khalil Shakir, and then behind that was a whole lot of nothing with respect to the guys in that room. And then I turn over to the Ravens, and it's like you basically just got fired from Buffalo to pick up right where you left off, which was a team that has the franchise quarterback, has some questions on defense, although they're not that bad. And then you talk about the weapons that are around the quarterback. Oh, a good running back, but the organization has swung and missed a million times on wide receiver. Like, those are two situations where you're looking at the AFC North. I don't know what Sean McDermott wants to do, and I don't know if he looks at either of those situations and go, that was too much like Buffalo. That was too much like Buffalo.
Well, you get stale, though. You're in, it's new voice. He goes to Baltimore, it's a new voice, right? So that could help him. That's why coaches get hired to get fired, because after a while, you get stale, regardless of your success. Those guys who last, 18 years, those are very few and far between now. And you won't see those because you burn it on both ends. You get tired. Your message gets stale. Your relationships with people go away. The idea when Kevin said, I didn't know anything about Flacco. I always thought those guys were connected at the hip with all their decisions. So things get stale. And, sometimes if I'm going to a new spot and I've been established, I'm going where Lamar Jackson's at, right? Because I know I got a guy. I can at least build there, and I got a guy. Because without a quarterback, you had no chance.
Daryl, I want to go back to kind of what you said, too, on the McDermott side of things of the candidates that were brought in.
Yeah.
Because I kind of draw him almost not in the same light, and don't take this the wrong way between these two candidates, but almost a Harbaugh type. Like, we know that the Browns reached out to John Harbaugh to try to get an interview, and he certainly didn't fit that mold either, right?
Right. Yeah, and look, I mean, as much as I really wanted John here, I was also realistic about the situation, right? It was a reach. I did what I could for you, Cleveland. I was trying to speak it into existence. Look, they got a 40-minute phone call out of it. Okay, I mean, what else do you want from me here, right? But I am curious as to whether or not he has any regrets about taking that Giants job too soon.
Well, I think that's a
maybe
conversation
to a lesser
with a lot of
degree,
these guys, right?
You have Kevin Stefanski too, right?
Right.
I mean, both those guys, with that Buffalo job opening up. But, this is I said it last week, and I'll repeat it again this week. This is a hard place to win. This is a hard place to coach. This is a hard or I should say, this is not the easiest organization to be successful with, to collaborate with. There's a lot of voices you have to deal with here. There's just a lot, and not everyone can do it. And I thought Kevin Stefanski did as good a job as anyone navigating all those waters, navigating all those challenges. And then at some point, it was time for everybody to move on, which is what happened this past year, right? And, wish Kevin nothing but the best in Atlanta. I hope it works out for him and whatnot. But I think that right away, John Harbaugh figured out, this isn't the situation. You look at some of the comments made at the press conference today, right? The GM basically telling reporters, well, that's just on paper. It doesn't matter. The GM and the coach always work together. Like, that's a disaster waiting to happen. That is a dysfunctional family before they even begin.
Before they move in, they're already struggling.
Right. It's already a dysfunctional situation. Now, guess who's going to win the battle? It's going to be John Harbaugh.
It's written in paper.
Okay,
it's in pen.
Right. But right now, I already see the red lights popping off in my peripheral vision of just the crisis that the New York Giants at some point are going to find themselves in. Because when push comes to shove, Harbaugh's going to make the call, not the GM. It's in, it's on paper. So, and a young coach here might fit with where they are roster-wise. It's a young roster, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be bringing more young kids in. They got 4 or 5 of like the top 100 and some picks in this upcoming draft, similar to last year. And those guys most likely are going to play. And it might be important to have a younger coach work with those players that knows how to connect with them, because the younger players, They interact differently. They need to be coached differently. They absorb information differently. And and this is no disrespect to any of the older coaches in the NFL, but a lot of them have to do a little on-the-job learning as well and evolving in how they go about their business and their interactions and presenting information to their players.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, we know I like some of the younger names in this. We're going to talk about kind of what comes with that coming up at 8 o'clock because coming up here in about 5 minutes, we're going to talk to Dane Brugler, get some NFL draft insight of The Athletic. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, and Daryl Ryder, all with the guys here on the Fan Offseason Special.
When there's news
all off-season long. Stream us on the Odyssey app and on your smart speaker by telling Alexa to play 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Daryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special. We have plenty more on the head coaching search to come in the 8 o'clock hour as we're with you all here until 9 o'clock tonight before traditionally overtime with Jake Volnick starts from 9 to 11. But we're going to take a little bit of a break from some of the head coaching stuff. We're going to get into some of the younger candidates, in a specific question centered around them based on risk. We're going to look around the AFC North a little bit, but we're going to take a break from all that to get into a little bit more of the draft-sided conversation as it relates to the Browns, where they're heading in April. And to do so, we head out to the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. Dane Brugler of The Athletic joins us now. Dane, what's going on?
Hey, good evening, guys. How are you?
I mean, we are in the midst of what is probably some of the most tense times and some of the most, I would say, opinionated times. I know where everybody feels this team should go, but no lack of excitement.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I am a Northeast Ohio guy, so I know what the draft means to this fan base and how important it is. And it feels like this year is no different, especially with 2 first-round picks. And we're about to have a new head coach here. And so what is this, the next era of Browns football look like? So things will be really interesting here the next few months.
Dean, let me start off with sort of tying these two things together, because obviously the Browns have not yet hired a head coach, and that's going to play into the draft decision. But you take into account with all of the needs that they have, how much is that impacting really where the Browns can go starting at 6 and the path they take forward in this draft?
Well, I'm a big believer in that, you draft best player available. And, I think for this team, that won't be an issue because there are so many needs across the roster. Now, I think most would point to quarterback, receiver, offensive line, those 3 areas that this team needs to look at the most this offseason. And so you have to look at this draft and say, all right, let's stack the top 6 players. And what are we looking at? We're guaranteed to get one of these guys. Is someone going to really make that impact for us to take us where we want to go? And I think that this draft could set up that way. It's a really unique draft where we're going to have 1 quarterback. It's kind of similar to last year, actually, where it's a 1 quarterback at the top type of deal. And then, but last year we had Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. This year we don't necessarily have that. Pick number 2 is wide open in terms of who it's going to be. So I think there's a little bit of there's an unsettled nature to this year's top 10, especially the top 6, where it won't be easy to forecast, at least at this point, where who's going to be still on the board. But knowing that this team needs a receiver, needs offensive line help, there will at least be 1 player at one of those 2 positions that I think will upgrade this team in their offense for not only 2026, but moving forward.
Yeah, Dane, you mentioned offensive line and receiver. The Browns obviously have 6 and 24. Uniquely, last year they drafted 2 quarterbacks. They drafted 2 running backs. Is this the type of draft where the Browns might be able to fulfill multiple needs in both of those position rooms? It's not like they just need 1 offensive lineman or 1 wide receiver. They need the multiples. I know we're only in January, a day after the national championship, but as you look at this right now, could the Browns potentially double dip at both those positions in this draft?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I think that's a very realistic outcome here. And we'll have to see how does free agency play out. That'll help shape the needs for this team on draft weekend. But, yeah, I think that we're going to read a lot of mock drafts the next few months where those 2 first-round picks are going to be a receiver, offensive line in whatever order. And, I mean, that's what I came out with my mock draft last week, and it was Francis Mauigoa, Miami right tackle at 6, and then Casey Concepcion, the wide receiver from Texas A&M at 24. And, I think after that, 2nd round, 3rd round, I wouldn't say this is a very tackle-rich draft necessarily. There are some good players at this position, I think, throughout the draft, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a strength just in terms of the overall depth at offensive tackle. but wide receiver is pretty deep. I was a little skeptical coming into the year how deep wide receiver would be, but I should know better. I mean, it's just every year, wide receiver, it shows up, and it's a position that there ends up being more players than I think we expect. There's so much talent at that position, and so if the Browns want to double dip and go receiver first round and then another one, say the third round, I mean, I think that would make perfect sense for the needs, what they need to do to get better on offense, regardless of who's at quarterback, and especially at receiver, this would be a good draft to do that.
Dane, when you talk about receiver, when you look at Carnell Tate, for me, he's a guy who wins at the catch point, right? A guy downfield, vertical guy. You like him more, or do you like, for me, I like a Mekhi Lemon more, a guy in the slot, a guy who can kind of make this offense kind of easy or easier than it's been for them to move the ball down the field. What kind of receiver do you like, and do you think the Browns should go in one direction or the other?
Well, I think it just comes down to, what are you looking for, more of an X? Are you looking for more of the slot? I mean, because they're all receivers, right? But it's kind of like saying, Joel Bitonio and, Joe Thomas play the same position where, they're both offensive linemen, but obviously one's a tackle, one's a guard. So it's just a little bit different. It depends on exactly what you're looking for your offense. But no, I mean, I think you hit on it. Carnell Tate, what he did this year, especially down the field, he had 9 catches of 40-plus yards. He's so good in those contested situations where it's his ball, and he will hit the extension that he has to go get the ball, bring it in, very good along the sideline. His route running really improved this year. That was the biggest jump that we've seen from his tape this year compared to last year. Just the extra detail he put in is really impressive. Be interested to see what he runs at the combine, because he's not a blazer necessarily, but his pacing is really impressive, and it helps him win those downfield routes, especially those double moves. He's deadly. But, how could you not really appreciate Mekhi Lemon's game? He is so tough at the catch point. You can't. I know the USC connection's probably playing a part in this, but you can't help but think a little bit of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of weapon, because he's not big, and you have to be okay with that size. He's not going to run a blazing 40. It's not like his athletic profile is going to blow you away. But in terms of wide receiver specific traits, that's what gets you a little bit excited about what he brings to the offense. And so can you take a slot receiver, as early as you'd have to take him in order to get a guy like that? I mean, that's something that I think every team would kind of debate internally in their own war rooms. And I would throw Jordan Tyson in there as well from Arizona State, who reminds me a lot of Stephon Diggs, where he just creates his own separation and he wins at the catch point. And if you have those two traits, I can win with you. So, any of those 3 receivers, those are the top 3 receivers this year. And then I think it's Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. So it's a pretty good group of receivers this year in the first round.
Dane, obviously the quarterback position gets really interesting in Cleveland because you have Shedeur here, and I know you did plenty of tape watching and diving into him last year during the draft process. Is there another quarterback in this draft that you think makes sense, is comparable to Shedeur, that is worth bringing in at any level within that draft? Obviously, assuming that Fernando Mendoza is probably not falling to 6 as we assume as we sit here today.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can put in Sharpie Mendoza. He's going to be that number 1 overall pick. The only question is, do the Raiders love him, or would they be open to trade and doing business? And I highly doubt it. So I think that's a fair assumption. Fernando Mendoza going to Vegas at that number 1 pick. And then, I think there is some debate about who's that next quarterback. I think most would say Ty Simpson from Alabama. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, I think, is kind of the forgotten guy because the season went just completely sideways for LSU this year. But he's going to be down there in Mobile at Senior Bowl, and I think he's going to impress some people. And so I think Nussmeier on day 2 definitely a name to keep an eye on. Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss, we're kind of waiting and seeing what his future holds. He sued the NCAA basically saying, I deserve that extra year of eligibility. I think he's going to get it, but we know that's his priority. He wants to go back to Ole Miss for 1 more year. But if for whatever reason, if he is pushed into this draft class, that becomes pretty interesting, because what he did down the stretch for the Rebels and in the playoffs especially, beating Georgia, almost beating Miami, just a really impressive player who's not very big. He's not going to wow you with size, but the arm talent's impressive. The movements are impressive. There's a lot to like about Chambliss, and it would also help him in this class that it's just not a deep quarterback group. And so Chambliss would definitely have a shot at quarterback 2, quarterback 3.
Dane, we talked a little bit about the offensive line. Obviously, everyone wants to look at offensive tackles in that regard. What does this interior lineman class look like, the guards and the centers?
I would say it's okay. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. I wouldn't call it an above-average group. I mean, I think this year it's the edges, tight ends really good, receivers good. And then I think that the next tier, we're talking corners and linebackers and offensive tackles, and then maybe even a step down. That's where we're talking about the interior. I love the Penn State kid, Ioane. I think he's one of the top 15 players in this draft. It's just he's a guard. He'll be kind of like Caleb Downs as a safety and Jeremiah Love as a running back. Like they play the quote-unquote non-premium positions, but they're easily one of the best players in this draft, just all things considered. They just won't go as high because of where they play. But, I think if you wait till day 2, Chase DeSantis from Texas A&M is a really good guard. I really like Logan Taylor from Boston College. Centers, there's probably not a guy that's going to go top 60, but 3rd round, 4th round, definitely a few interesting names in there. Jake Slaughter from Florida, Trey Zune from Texas A&M, Parker Brailsford, Alabama, Connor Liu, Auburn. So I think this is a group that's not going to wow you necessarily, but there are guys that can come in and compete for a starting job. And if they're pressing the action, they can at least hold their own. So I think this would not be a bad year, 3rd round, 4th round, to look at that position and feel like you're upgrading what you already have on your roster.
Dane, we appreciate you setting aside the time a ton. Obviously, draft a long way out, so I'm sure there will be plenty more draft conversations to be had across the station and maybe right back here with us. We appreciate you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic with us there on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline. We'll react to some of the things he had to say. Was definitely higher on the wide receivers, not so much on the interior line, but a lot of things to dive into as well. I think it's worth looking at as you look at some of these younger head coaches. Is this the time for the Browns to legitimately take a risk on a head coach? 216-474-0092. We all climb into it. Coming up here at 8 o'clock, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Daryl Ryder with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Daryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
One more hour of the Fan Offseason Special with you guys here every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Myself, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Daryl Ryder with you guys. Just got done talking to Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Got some pretty good insight on the draft. Sounds like a little bit maybe top heavy on tackle, not so much depth. Maybe just not high on guard and interior offensive lineman at all.
I'm not going to lie. I got really nervous when he suggested that Andrew Berry use a third-round pick on another wide receiver.
That is, I think that's a fair concern. Lance, I know you've done a little bit of deeper digging, obviously, into the draft. And not deeper digging, I don't want to say, because by the time we get to April, you'll be well far and set by that. But you've done some digging into the draft already. I mean, I've looked at some of the wide receivers. There's a decent amount of guys, even like end of the first round type of guys. Like I know Dane brought up Casey Concepcion. I really like a Denzel Boston. There's a couple of guys, Chris Bell, who I know dealt with the knee injury at the end of the season. But like, there's a few guys down there that Browns go say tackle at 6. And you don't necessarily, at least I feel like you're dying and missing out on a decent or a really good wide receiver at the end of the first round.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to ask Dane that because when I break down the receivers, I look at two different receivers. Like he's saying, I don't really think of it as a slot as much as I do a touch guy. Those slot guys are guys you try to get the ball in space, whatever you try to do. So if you look at like McVay and Shanahan, they're always trying to find touches, right? If you think of Debo, guys who can just get the ball and make your offense work without blocking anybody. And as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback, you need that. A guy you throw a 5-yard pass like Samson against the right, where you take it, that helps build offensive kind of continuity and strength. They didn't have a lot of those guys. So, the guys you're talking about, great. Guys I have on my list. I love Bell, kid, like you said, kid out of Louisville. Concepcion, Brazil is on my list. Elijah Sherratt, the kid from Indiana, the other receiver. I like him as a guy who's very similar to Ced Tillman, though, in terms of length and back shoulder, and when you go see Ced Tillman, you're just, for me, I'm always shocked he's not more dominant. He's such a physical, specimen. You got the Bernard kid out of Alabama, Antonio Williams out of Clemson. I like Jacoby Lane's the other receiver at USC. Malachi Fields is another long body guy. So there's a lot of guys out there that kind of fit the X, that outside guy running the post and the comebacks and the go routes. And then a guy in space. And for me, as an offensive coordinator, I always wanted the guys in space first, because those are guys that can make me get some yards without having to be perfect.
Well, I think there's a ton of guys. And like you said, you pointed out a list of like 10 guys right there on top of, the 3 that we have all the way at the top of the draft. Wouldn't be that surprised if the Browns don't go wide receiver at 6. It might be. Again, we still have to play this entire thing out.
I will caution them to heed the words of former Browns general manager Phil Savage. Don't order dessert before dinner, okay?
Always starts up front.
Got to go meat and potatoes first.
Always.
And the meat and potatoes right now is the offensive line. And look, you might be able to do that by trading back from 6 and staying around that 10 to 12 range to get an offensive lineman. I would just rather they go ahead and just pick the lineman at 6. That's just me. But I think using 24 on a wide receiver, even if you wanted to come right back with your second-round pick and double up on that position, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Then come back in the 3rd round and take another offensive lineman. Like, if you want your first 4 picks to be wide receiver and offensive lineman, you're going to get no arguments whatsoever from me. And I did like the fact that Dane mentioned that he seems to be a fan of the wide receiver talent available in this draft. Got a little nervous, too, when he mentioned that maybe the interior line not as strong as the perimeter tackles are, but there's a lot of time between now and April, and obviously those opinions change over the course of the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Interior offense linemen, we have to go through free agency to determine, are the Browns going to pick up a couple of these guys on the inside? Are they going to sign, does Tevin Jenkins come back? Is Wyatt Teller, did that entire thing blow over with Kevin Stefanski leaving? Is he back in Cleveland, right? These are all questions we have to have answered before we even get to April. But
does Teller even fit what they're going to run from an offensive line scheme as well?
Yeah,
So
Because he's a marry the run with the pass guy.
well,
absolutely right.
Not only that, but the pull and pin blocking
Yeah.
that they would do, right? I mean that it frustrated me that they seemed to get away from that.
Pulling those guys, getting them out.
Yeah,
Counters and powers and pin and pull. Yeah, I'm with you.
And getting to the second and the
Yep.
third level of the defense with the blocking down the field in the run game, like they got away from it the last couple of years, and I understand maybe part of it might have been by design with Bill Callahan's departure, but like last year they were supposed to get back to that a little bit, and I don't really think that last season they did a whole lot of it.
Not much at all.
It was in very select situations, and I think that leads to a lot of frustration because I remember that following the 2024 season, I remember doing locker cleanout, and guys were talking about, man, I really hope, and these are the offensive linemen, man, I really hope we just get back to doing what we do.
Well, that's what a player's coach is, right? Maximizing. When people say what a player's coach is, that's exactly right. Teller and Bitonio, those guys are at their best when they're down blocking or pulling, right? Those are gap schemes, and they got away from a lot of those gap schemes, and that's so you're not maximizing what a player does best, which I've always thought Jim Schwartz does best on the other side of the ball. Don't worry about what a guy can't do. Worry about why he's a pro, and why Teller and Bitonio are pros is because they block down and can pull.
And you know what actually just dawned on me? I've been convinced that Joel Bitonio is going to retire. Well, he's a free agent. He's not under contract. I would not be the least bit shocked if he went to Atlanta. Bill Callahan's there. Kevin Stefanski's there. But it wouldn't shock me. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. I would not be stunned by that.
But those offensive line, going back to it, they got to get some veterans in there, right? I mean, obviously they got to draft a couple guys. I'm with you at 6, but they got to bring in some guys. You know, it's kind of like those
Need some experience.
Yeah, I always say it's like the freshman lineman in college. No matter how good he is, he's 18. Those guys who graduate are 23. It's the same thing kind of in the pro, right? If you're unless you're an elite guy, top 5, top 6 guy, you know, you need some time to kind of, you know, mold and get yourself going to go. You get that old man strength. So that 27 to 30 range kind of seems like they got to get a guy or two in that range as well, along with, I'm with you, a starting tackle who's going to be there for a long time, and then going with another guy. I'd be okay with going 2 offensive linemen in the first round. That's how much I think it starts inside out.
Now let's not get carried away, Coach.
But inside out is the way you win up front.
I know.
There's no doubt about it. And you can't do it the opposite way. So though I'd want a receiver, I would not hate that.
Listen, Andrew Berry likes to get really creative in his draft process, okay? You never know what this thing's going to look at. But obviously, Browns need to figure out the head coach part of this, right? How all these guys are going to fit into that scheme.
Forget just the head coach. You got
entire offensive system,
yeah,
right?
You got to figure out the offensive system. You got to figure out the offensive staff. Like who's staying?
Yeah.
Are they just going to gut it and rebuild it from the ground up, which wouldn't shock me that that's ultimately what they do. And then what you pay attention to your point, Coach, about bringing in some experience, you're going to look at where the head coach comes from, where the offensive coordinator comes from, where the offensive line coach comes from. And guess what? You're going to see an infusion of talent, I bet, from those 3 organizations, because that's typically what happens here in these processes. They like to bring in guys they've either scouted, have had them on their rosters, right? So
runs their scheme, knows who they are. Exactly right.
There's a lot of work to do between now and free agency in mid-March, and then obviously when we get to the draft at the end of April. But just like that's just another thing for fans to kind of keep in mind as this puzzle gets kind of put back together. You know, pay attention where these guys are coming from to fill these, not just the head coach position, but the coordinator position groups. And then you're going to see some players come from that. I mean, we're already hearing it. John Harbaugh wanting to raid the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, those guys down there know how I like to do things. We saw it here. Eric Mangini was famous for this. There wasn't a former Patriot or New York Jet that guy did not want to bring in here. Okay, God love Jason Trusnick, but come on, like what are we doing? So just kind of like keep that in mind, though, that it's all about familiarity in the National Football League, and coaches like bringing in players that they're familiar with, either from a scouting perspective or were on their respective rosters.
Well, I think this is where this part gets interesting. As you look at obviously where the Browns are going head coach-wise, you have a ton of young guys that haven't been head coaches before. You have the Shielhouses, the Adinskis, even some of the other names on the list. A Minter is an older guy, but is obviously spent some time in the NFL, spent some time in college. It's not like you've spent a ton of time, getting to know a ton of guys throughout the scouting process, know guys that you've worked with, in years past, which is part of where this comes in with the risk, right? Like, not only are you trying to project out, okay, what are the guys, these younger guys, capable of being as head coaches? And I mean, like, Shieldhouse has never even been an OC before. You didn't see he's got 1 year as an OC. You're taking a risk on that. You're also taking a risk on, this guy's not going to have the players that he wants to bring in. He might not have the coaching staff that he wants to bring in.
Does he have a Rolodex?
Yeah.
Right? Because here's what people have to understand about these especially the second in-person interview. That's where you really get into the nitty-gritty of, like, okay, X's and O's, that's one thing. What's your staff going to look like? Who's going to be your offensive coordinator? Now, we're assuming, and understandably so, we're assuming that it's going to be heavily suggested that Jim Schwartz remains on as defensive coordinator. And that's not look, Kevin Stefanski kept Ulbrich down in Atlanta as his defensive coordinator, right? Still took the job. So that it's not unheard of, right? And Schwartz has already interviewed twice in this search here. He did the virtual and the in-person and all that. But that's what that second in-person interview is all about. Like, hey, also, too, what besides the fit and the X's and O's and scheme and all that, what's your staff going to look like? What are you bringing to us in terms of teaching our players, coaching our players, right? And a lot of these younger guys, I don't know that the Rolodex is deep enough, right? I mean, Kevin Stefanski is going to put that staff in Atlanta together in a hurry. John Harbaugh is going to put that staff in New York together in a hurry. If McDermott gets a head coaching job, he's going to be able to put his staff together wherever he lands together in a hurry. I'm laughing at the water that some national people are carrying for Robert Saleh down in Tennessee, where they're like, well, it might be hard for Robert Saleh to bring in an offensive coordinator with so many competitive openings. Oh, shut up. Well, get out of here.
Guys work in enough places.
Guy's been in the league forever, okay? You don't need to transcribe whatever text message you just got sent about the difficulty that it might be having down there all of a sudden finding a coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, okay? Come on now. He's been in the league a long time. He'll have no problem finding an offensive coordinator. Or maybe he will. Maybe he'll find that not many people want to go work for him down in Tennessee. But that's what this whole second interview stuff's about. Figuring out what the staff might look like as well.
Well, yeah, and you're not only talking that, but guys have different philosophies. Do you want an outside receiver coach only, or do you want a slot receiver coach? Do you want a guy who coaches all the receivers? Same thing up front. Callahan did all five. Some guys do it where the guards and center have a coach and the tackles have a coach. And there's a lot of different parts that you're absolutely right. Do you have a big enough kind of outreach to go get those guys that you want for your scheme if you're in charge of your scheme?
I'm so grateful that Robert Saleh was not a candidate here. I do not like him as a coach. I don't think he's a leader of men at all. He's a good X's and O's guy, but I'm sorry. Oh, Shador. I'm just so blessed that you're here. No, we have enough people doing that, okay? We don't need the head coach doing that either. Aaron, oh, how we love thee. We're so happy you're a New York Jet. And they put that stuff all over Hard Knocks. Like, the whole series was basically Robert Saleh kissing Aaron Rodgers' backside, and you could see the looks of the players' faces as he's doing it in these meetings. It's no wonder that when he got hurt, their season fell apart. Meanwhile, here, Kevin Stefanski, his starter gets hurt. They need 5 quarterbacks. They won 11 games and made the playoffs. That's the difference between creating a team in training camp and not creating a team.
So this gets interesting because we bring up some of the concerns, and I want to get into this is obviously, if the Browns are going to go down this route, it is a risk. You are taking multiple risks in different levels on hiring these young guys. It is right now the right time to take that risk. We're going to get to it in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder, Whitney guys. We'll get to an AFC North catch-up as well, all coming up on the Fan Offseason Special.
Sign up to be a part of the Fan Club. Download the free Odyssey app and follow 92.3 The Fan to get all of the best audio and best stories sent straight to your inbox. 92.3thefan.com. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Fan Offseason Special, back with you guys here. A couple more segments to go. And Browns head coaching candidates definitely skewed to the... I feel like young, it's the correct word in this instance, but it's the inexperienced, I think, more for a lot of people of like, and I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but it's guys who haven't been OCs long, it's guys who haven't been OCs at all, and then obviously you have your Jim Schwartz, you have your Todd Munkins who have done the coordinator thing for a very long time, Jim obviously doing the head coach thing previously. But I do kind of turn around, and I have had so many people and multiple different platforms look at me and go, why would the Browns be taking a risk right now, right? Why is this the time that you're going to go through and take a risk? To the point where I turn around, I'm just kind of like, why is this not the time you're taking a risk, right? Like I look at it, if there was a slam dunk hire, if you had a guy who was proven as a head coach, like Sean McDermott, if you tell me I need to go get that guy, okay, like he's proven it, he's a winner, I know exactly what I have in him. I look over at every other candidate, and I'm like, there's risk built into all of these guys that I don't know are so much different than the younger risks. They're just different risks that I'm looking at. Like, why not take my stab and try to find my quote-unquote next Sean McVay, right? I hate that idea of a term because you're not finding Sean McVay 2.0. Basically in anybody. That guy is a one piece, an absolute wonder that just happened to be hiding. But you turn around, it's like, why am I going to sit here and I almost think it's as much of a risk to go, okay, I'm going to make Jim Schwartz my head coach, right? He's here, players like him, but at the same time, the only experience that I have as Jim coaching as a head coach was in Detroit, where, quite frankly, didn't work out that well. And if I settle for, well, this is a safe option, safe is not getting the Browns to a Super Bowl, and it's not getting them a deep playoff run. It's going to get them to, you might be competitive, you might make a playoff game, you might win a playoff game. You're probably not doing much more than that, the tight 3-year window that you have with this defense and Myles Garrett.
Well, Jim in Detroit lost almost twice as many games as he won. Now, right. The plus side of that is when he took over the Lions, they were coming off a winless season, and within 3 years, he had them in the playoffs. But they had no staying power whatsoever, okay? It's great that the players love him. I really don't care if the players love him. I'm not interested in whether or not the players love the coach. I'm interested, yes, in what the players have to say about him as a coach. Yes, that part I am. But as from a decision-making process portion of it, yeah, I don't care. I'm not interested in whether or not you like the coach, okay? Because typically if you like the coach, you're not getting the best results out of your players. And as far as taking a chance, look, none of these guys excite me. None of them. Jim Schwartz, no, okay. Todd Monken, yeah, no, don't care. Grant Udinski, yeah, all right. What's he accomplished? Nate Shieldhouse, oh, okay, he takes Sean McVay's genius, computerizes it, and helps present it to the team. Okay. And then Jesse Minter, who's a little older, has a little more experience, and I think should be a head coach. Okay, but he's never been a head coach before. None of these guys excite me. None of these guys make me want to pound the table for them and get fans hyped up about them. All of them are a risk, except for Sean McDermott. Like that, Mike McDaniel took his took his name out of the hat today. But none of these guys really are easy to sell to fans because they're young, as you said, and inexperienced outside of Schwartz and Monken. We're down to 5. We need a 6th. They're going to have to pick a 6th at some point. I'd say in the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to have a 6th name, okay? Because they're going to have to interview somebody else. Right. Because, like I said, Mike McDaniel's not coming to Cleveland for his interview. So they're going to have to find another name to throw into the hat. But none of these guys excite me. I'm sorry. Like, I'd love to get fans all excited and be like, hey, that's the guy the Browns absolutely have to have. Got to have that guy. It does not exist in their coaching search.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point, right? It's like I look around these guys, there's not the pound the tape guy. Like, who's to say that Grant Udinski is any worse of a hire? Like, there's going to be people who come out, and this is going to be true of all, but I've seen people on social media already starting And there's both sides. If it's not Grant Udinski, then it was a failed hire. If it's not Udinski or Shieldhouse. And there's people who are, well, if it's not Jim Schwartz, you botched the hire. Like, there's nothing here to go off of to say, like, this candidate is 1,000% the guy. There's cycles like that. Don't get it wrong. Like, there's cycles to look at it and go, you should probably pick that guy. Like, he's in front of you and have an opportunity, and he is the best option for you. I just don't feel that same way.
Well, for me, I think Schwartz, I'm much more excited than Schwartz than you guys are. And here's why, is that, first of all, he didn't have a lot of success in Detroit. Daryl brought up a good point, came off the winless season. But you'd like to think a guy has improved, right? So we're basing that on what he did in Detroit. I like to base it on what he's done in Cleveland. I'd like to base it on what he's done with his defense. And to Daryl's point, if you watch him coach every single day, this isn't a guy who says, attaboy, and you're doing great. This is a guy that's in their face. This is a guy who's very structured, very organized. And what he brings is at least for me, he brings a little bit less chaos in the unknown, right? The CEO part of it. Doesn't mean he's going to do it best or do it right. It just means for me, the how you're going to run your organization, he's had to do it before. So I like him in that, now you get him and then you go out and get a Shieldhouse or Udinski as your offensive coordinator. Now you got the CEO part a little bit. Your defense is still pretty solid because he's going to bring that mentality, and now you bring in an offensive guy. But for me, I try to base it on what I've seen him here in Cleveland because you'd like to think he improved, right? Yeah. Like there's coaches, maybe not, and people have been really hot with me because, this doesn't work out. But maybe it will for him because he's had to step back and just be the defensive guy. I don't know. I think he brings a little bit more stability to that defense, which is the only stable thing they have on that of all three phases.
I'm going to get nuts here for a minute. Hey, I'm going to throw a theory at you. I think that potentially as part of that second interview, they ran a name or two by him. Would you be willing to remain on as the defensive coordinator with a little maybe extra in your check, plus we'll give you an assistant head coach or whatever, right? And then let's just say they hire Grant Udinski when the dust settles, right? We go through this whole – let's say –
actively the betting favorite, by the way, on the markets that offer it.
But then they circle back and bring in Nate Shieldhouse to be the offensive coordinator. Because right now he's just a pass game specialist. He's not a coordinator. It would be a promotion for him. Or, all right, let's flip this, right? What if they name Nate Shieldhouse the head coach and they bring in another young guy to be the coordinator, right? And so you get two of the up-and-coming young football geniuses. Because listen, the Cleveland Browns love them some football geniuses, okay? They do. Like that, they just do. I think I'll leave it at that. But like, I don't know. I don't think that's like the worst idea in the world where you keep Schwartz. He stays in his role, give him a little extra money, make him happy. But you have your young offense because that's where they need the help, man. They need the help. Offense and special teams, okay?
But I think that's part of the problem I have too. Is like, okay, so you can go get those guys as an OC, right? We just saw one, far from a guarantee. One, I think you didn't.
Bring Todd Monken back?
Well, I think the two things you have going for you is that something that Schwartz wants to do? Because ultimately you're going to give him the power to probably try to build out his own staff, even on the offensive. We talked about that Rolodex. Schwartz definitely has one. He's got guys that he's worked with. And at the same time, like, we assume, maybe you can go get a Shieldhouse as an OC. It's an upgrade. Shieldhouse is in a candidacy for like 4 other of the 6 open head coaching positions.
Right.
There's nothing to say that you don't look at both Pittsburgh and Baltimore have him on their list. That guy could get poached as a head coach.
And you're trying to play keep away. Let me ask you both this. When it comes to Schwartz, I kind of feel like if they do promote Schwartz, it's only going to be a 1 or 2 year situation.
It's probably true. I mean, unless they have success, right?
Well, they're not going to because this offense has to be rebuilt from the ground up. But I really believe that if they do promote Schwartz, he'll either be fired in the next 12 months or the next 24 months. It's not going to be a long-term hire.
Well, I'm with you on Shieldhouse. So Shieldhouse, Udinski, if you look at those guys, when I look at it, I go, I want that guy coaching my offense because the offense is from the studs. You're building from the studs. I don't want him to have CEO responsibilities at this point in time. He's a young guy. This whole kind of overwhelming you, for me, I'm hiring Schwartz. I don't care how long he's here. I'm talking for next year. Even if you have a plan to have one of those guys be your guy down the road, have that guy focus on offense. Learn maybe he's the assistant head coach to Schwartz, because then Schwartz can handle the CEO part of it. This guy can draft who he needs for his offense. I don't know. I'm same kind of thing the opposite way. But for me, these young guys are being brought in because of their offensive mind. I want those guys to be doing that for now. Right? Let's have them learn the CEO part of what it means to run an organization. But if you're doing all that, you're not going to have the input that you have if you're just the OC.
So I think part of my problem on that, and maybe this is where we look at different. Like, you look to next year and say the best opportunity. I look at it as go, in my lifetime, I've watched the Browns cycle through coach after coach. I'd like the little stability. If I go and I give, okay, let's have Grant Udinski learn the CEO stuff.
You got 6 years of Stefanski. What else do you want?
More success. I'd like some sustained success while guys here longer.
Details.
Yeah. But like Udinski, if you bring him here and made him play Carter Shieldhouse, it doesn't make a difference. That guy has success. If he helps turn around the offense, it doesn't even have to be like the Browns offense is unbelievable. It just has to be Browns offense looks a hell of a lot better than it did last year. That guy's a head coach next year. Like, that guy is getting the opportunity. You go through, as soon as I hire a defensive-minded head coach, which the only two we have to go off of are Minter, which shakes up your entire defense more likely than not, or rehiring Jim Schwartz. I now have to trust Jim Schwartz in this organization to re-find me an offensive coordinator every year, every 2 years. If you're hiring the young, I'm in the boat where I'd rather just take the risk. If you think that guy 2 years down the line can be the CEO type, can do all the things that a head coach can do, I'm willing to let that guy learn on the job a little bit. Like, if you really trust in the hiring process and you trust in, hey, we're getting a guy who's going to be a great head coach, I'd hope that, opposed to Daryl's point on Jim Schwartz, maybe you give that guy a little leash, right? Maybe it struggles the first couple of years. Guy's learning on the job. But maybe that's your coach for the next decade to 2 decades.
Yes,
and
because what I want while you're going through a rebuild is a coach that's learning how to do the job. Awesome.
Well, I want a guy.
Well, wouldn't this be the time, though?
But don't you want a guy that where winning's the most important thing? Like, I always think about, like, I agree with the great teams retool, they don't rebuild, and it seems like we're always rebuilding. Like, I would want, like, if I'm hiring Schwartz, I'm telling myself I want to win next year. Maybe not going to win, right? But I'm not saying that. I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire Schwartz. I'm going to get one of these young offensive guys who's brilliant. I'm going to say, I just want you to coach offense right now, right? I'm going to have Schwartz bring in one of his guys because he's got a Rolodex because he's older. But for me, I always feel like when they draft in the second, third round, or when they're hiring guys, it's always down the road. Like, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be like that, but how about right now? How about, like, what are we doing to win next year? Like, because you're a lot younger than me, but there hasn't been a lot of success since 99, right? So maybe the thought process has to be, we're going to win right now, and we're going to do everything we can to win right now, with the idea that down the road we're going to, maybe we do have to take a little bit of lumps if it's, Udinski, but I think the focus has got to be winning right now.
You know the last time the Browns went with the up-and-coming offensive genius?
Please sell.
Freddie Kitchens.
Well, okay, I don't know that anybody paid in Freddie Kitchens as a young offensive genius.
I
don't know if that was the sell anybody was making on him.
No, it absolutely was, because he was promoted to offensive coordinator when Hugh Jackson was fired, and they kind of did a little house cleaning there in the middle of the season, and they promoted Greg Williams to be the interim head coach. They promoted Freddie Kitchens to be the interim offensive coordinator, and they went through their coaching search in that offseason, and they gave the job to Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens was just about as qualified to be the head coach as Nate Shieldhouse is, or Grant Udinski is.
But this is not me saying that this is a foolproof brand. Like, you might hire Grant Udinski and he might flame out and he might be the worst. He might be Freddie Kitchens 2.0.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to be Freddie Kitchens 2.0.
I sure hope not.
That was a very unique experience, and I'm going to leave that at that.
But the range of outcomes is certainly wider. Like, I could be getting, yes, as much as I hate it, you could be getting Sean McVay. I could be getting an absolute pile of trash and nothing, too. That's up to the Browns to make that decision of what guy I'm actually getting, or what I'm leaning closer to.
You want to know another guy? Rob Chudzinski, who bounced back and forth from being a coordinator to a position coach, right? Hired him. He was a one-and-done, too. They don't do very well with the young, up-and-coming whippersnappers.
They just don't do very well at all.
Well,
they've hired the retread guys, and they've stunk, too.
Well, there's got to be, remember, the best coaches have the best players. That's part of the issue, too. They have not had the people. If you think about Schwartz being on defense, and everybody's talking about, and me included, how great Schwartz has been the last 3 years. He's got pretty good personnel on that side of the ball. Let's be completely honest. Good coaches come with good players.
Are you trying to say if he didn't have Myles Garrett, Carson Schlesinger, Grant Dilpit, and Denzel Ward, maybe he might not have been as good of a defensive coordinator the last 3 years?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Listen, I
Going out on a limb, right?
Just wanted to clarify your comments
and if
everybody.
you look at like McVay, you look at all these guys. There's a lot to do with the people you're only as good as the people you have, and that's where the Browns' offense has really, really struggled. They don't have any personnel.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an issue. It's a question for everybody. At 216-474-0092. Are the Browns in a position to take a risk on their head coach right now? We're going to take a quick look around the AFC North and their head coaching search coming back here as well. What have the second round of interviews told you about this coaching search? The guys in the room, what does that tell you about where the Browns want to go? We wrap it up in the final segment coming up here in about 5 minutes. Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Daryl Ryder, all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
covered. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Fan Offseason Special, last segment with you guys here before we get to overtime with myself from 9 to 11. But still a couple of things to cover. I do want to take a couple of minutes here at least to go around the AFC North. Obviously, head coaching searches going on in 3 of the 4 teams right now. It's not just the Browns. And
how did Zach Taylor make the cut, right?
There's
no bingo card with that on it preseason.
I will just never get past the fact that out of all the coaches, it's just this year to be like, oh yeah, Zach Taylor's the one guy that stayed. You could have given me a million different options of the way that this actually panned out. I understand there's not that many possibilities, but this would have been bottom of the list where everybody else gets fired and Zach Taylor is hired or is still employed.
Absolutely.
It would have never worked. But I want to get into that. We'll get into kind of what this list of now 5 candidates tells us about where the Browns are at. But I'll start with the Ravens, who are, by the way, you think the Browns are casting a wide net on candidates that they reached out to. The Ravens have talked to, if they're under the sun and considered for a head coaching job, the Ravens have basically reached out to them and at least requested an interview or wanted to have a conversation. I got the list in front of me, and there's about 15 to 20 names of guys that they talk to. I feel like we all take a step back, and Adam Schefter said really something interesting today where he had kind of broke down that they almost treat it like a draft, right, where they usually draft. Usually towards the back of the NFL, they let everybody else go and make their mistakes. They identify the guy that they really want and the guy that's going to fall to them, and they go, we'll turn that guy into greatness, right? That's going to be the great guy. It's kind of playing out that same way, and it's almost the exact route that everybody in the AFC North is taking right now, which is, okay, there's some teams eager to get their hires out there. Harbaugh goes, the Falcons jump on Stefanski, Titans make their hire. We're just kind of sitting back. We have our own processes, and we'll identify our guy while some of these candidates kind of flop off the board, even though some of them for the Browns weren't of interest. But everybody's kind of taking that same approach right now.
They're just kind of letting the coaching search come to them.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said, Harbaugh ended up in New York. The Dolphins hired Jeff Hafley. You've got Stefanski in Atlanta now. You got the Titans with Robert Saleh. So 4 of the 10 have been filled. The Bills are just kind of jumping on the gravy train here, trying to get their house in order as far as figuring out who they want to talk to. But yeah, it's a lot of names that have been associated with this Ravens opening. Here's my thing. I just hope that the Ravens and Steelers don't end up with someone that the Browns should have hired. But you know what? Why do I get the feeling that that's exactly how this is going to go this offseason, right? In 3 years down the line, I'm going to make a prediction right now. We're going to be 3-4 years down the line talking about the head coach of the Ravens and the Steelers and how the Browns should have hired him this offseason.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of the names that are actually between these two teams, too, are names that the Browns did not bring in. I believe Shieldhouse appears on both lists. He does. They have a couple of other guys who were brought in. Like Chris Shula was requested to be interviewed, but never was interviewed by the Browns. Jesse Minter is a guy on both lists. But, a lot of the names they've thrown out there have been guys that the Browns kind of, not a guy we're going to bring in for an interview or not a guy we're certainly going to bring in for a second interview.
Yeah,
only a couple of those.
Yeah, Brian Flores, Matt Nagy, Clint Kubiak, although we've had enough the Kubiak tree with Stefanski being here, so I kind of get that one. Davis Webb from the Broncos. I think he's their quarterbacks coach. Joe Brady, I think the Browns were kind of on the periphery, waiting to see what may or may not happen, but he's never materialized as a serious candidate here. You mentioned Chris Shula, who I thought was someone that the Browns should talk to. I thought he was someone that the Dolphins had a lot of interest in. That's why I was a little surprised. I should have been surprised because Hafley's got some Green Bay connection. Their GM, Green Bay. I'm sure that they'll be importing some former Packers down to South Florida. Boy, you want to talk about winning some guys over, taking them out of the frozen tundra of Green Bay, Wisconsin, down to Miami, Florida. But, yeah, this is a pretty wide net that Baltimore has thrown out there trying to look for John Harbaugh's replacement.
Well, Webb's an interesting guy. Webb's a guy, he's an air raid guy, right? So you look about the McVay and the Shanahan, this wide zone motion movement. The other, kind of hot, offense is the air raid, right? Throw the ball over the field, and Webb is an air raid guy from Texas Tech, and so he's kind of got those connections. Schule's a guy I thought the Browns should interview because he's a one high hat guy, and if they were going to hire Schwartz, he would have been a guy that kind of would have minimized the transition of a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Real quick, we'll get into the Brown search again. Hey, do we have a prediction for the two hires? Do you feel like either of these teams are leaning in any specific direction with these guys?
I'd be shocked if McDermott doesn't go to Baltimore after what we said tonight and thinking about what they have at quarterback, and if they go out and get a receiver with that defense in their fly, I'd be shocked if he that's a spot that I would see McDermott, because he's got even though it's similar, it's just a new voice and he knows what he's got there. And when you have an elite quarterback, you got a chance.
Yeah, and listening to Steve Bisciotti's press conference, he's not in this for the long haul.
No.
Okay? He wants to get his Vinny Lombardis and get out, all right? And I don't know that going with one of these young guys is the way to go. So I agree with you. I think McDermott ending up in Baltimore, I think that's I feel pretty good about. I'd actually put money on that.
Yeah,
that's how good I feel about that.
I think it's interesting. I think Jesse Minter's a name that stands out in Baltimore as well. Like, if you don't go get McDermott, I think Minter's kind of the...
Well, he's the Wink Martindale, Mike McDonald tree, right? So they don't have to change a defensive scheme that they've had so much success with. He's kind of one of the creators of it, right? When he went to Michigan, and he's kind of a Baltimore guy too, going back to Wink.
Yeah, Steelers are interesting too, because like Shula, I believe, is the like odds-on favorite where people can bet on it, but like, if you want to go down the same route, the Steelers keep the same mentality. Shula makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I also think everybody looks at that team and goes, well, the offense has been bad for basically since Ben lost his arm 3 years before he retired. That's where like a Shieldhouse kind of steps in and gets really interesting.
Well, you don't have a quarterback, you can't do a whole lot. Who'd have thunk that? But here's the difference between the Steelers and the Browns, okay? For all the grief that Mike Tomlin got in his later years, and I have said this for years, the dude still managed to win 10 games a year and make the playoffs, okay? Dealing with pretty much similar stuff that the Browns had to deal with, the quarterback carousel. And here we are with the Browns. You get 3, 5, 6 wins. Yeah, like
3 phases, right? So I'm big on the 3 phases. Think about how good a special teams and defense the Steelers play. Think about if the Browns, there's 4 games this year. If you just play 3 games, especially if you just play wash, I always call it wash special teams. You don't win it, but you don't lose it, which most special teams are in the NFL. You have 3 more wins. Kevin's still your coach.
Yeah, the Steelers play an ugly, and I do mean with a capital UGLY exclamation point infinity, okay? They played an ugly brand of football the last couple of years. But you know what?
Winning's never ugly, Daryl.
I understand. Coach, I was getting there. I was working my way.
You're working, Daryl.
I was working my way there. But like the fourth quarter, right? They'd always be in these games and then just find a way to win in the final 5 minutes. And yes, to them, it was beautiful.
Sorry, I cut your point off earlier.
That's all right.
I think
you're a coach. Listen, you know all about winning ugly.
That's right.
Being a beautiful sight.
I think there's a lot of Pittsburgh fans that would disagree with that. I think they would agree that their wins were ugly. They did not enjoy enough.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now. They got their wish. Tomlin's out.
Careful what you wish for.
But be careful what you wish for. As we're on the other side of this thing, no quarterback coaching carousel. Like, you're on the quarterback carousel. Now you're on the coaching carousel. Watch what you wish for. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. I know you're disappointed because you weren't advancing in the playoffs. You weren't competing for Super Bowls. And again, that's the difference in standards. Steeler fans expect to be competing for Vince Lombardi trophies. Browns fans are just hoping they're good enough to finish 500.
Which has got to change.
Or win in free agency, or win in the draft. Like that's the difference in the standards here. And I did my best while Stefanski was here to try and get fans to raise those standards, but kind of back to square one. So now it's back to, can they get back to 500? Can they score 20 points a game? Can they win a road game? Can they win a home game at 405? Like, coming out of the 1-31, I did a running gag for like 2 years of, last time they won a game in a particular time slot or on the road or in the division, or because it had gotten that bad here. Hopefully it gets that bad for the Steelers and they bottom out in a big, big way, and it lasts forever.
All right, we don't have much time here, but I will chime in. Adam Schefter now reporting, former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel is expected to become the Chargers offensive coordinator, barring a change of heart. So that would make a lot of sense today. McDaniel pulling his name probably from the Brown search because he did have the interview with the Chargers today, and it sounds like that interview went very well, and he's expecting to take that job and was basically telling the Browns, hey, appreciate the offer, but I got something here I want to take.
Would you rather coach Justin Herbert or whatever the Browns are going to throw in that quarterback room this year? I'm going to take Justin Herbert every day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And weather and turf, and it's perfect conditions.
They got a roof.
Yeah, I mean it's the perfect for him. It's the perfect spot.
He'll fit well in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a personality and a coach.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep it at that for sure.
Yeah, he definitely seems like an LA guy. But we're going to react more to this. I will overtime with Jake Volnick coming up from 9 to 11. But for us, we're all out of here as a group. Fan Offseason Special, guys. Second time around. I again thought we had a fun time, a lot of fun conversations, and I appreciate both of you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, man. Good time.
We'll do it again next week.
We shall.
We
may
will.
or may not have a coach. Do we have a coach next week?
Yes.
Do we have a coach next week?
No.
No.
All right.
All right, we'll see. Now we have a battle. We got something to talk about in the first 5 minutes. No doubt about it. Guys, appreciate you both. Again, every Tuesday, 7 to 9, you can catch the Fan Offseason Special. We will be back next week, right at the same time, talking these things again. Until then, you got 9 to 11 with just me, overtime with Jake Volnick. Come your guys' way right here on 92.3 The Fan.